I cannot support the confirmation of Mr. Bernanke, and I agree with some of my colleagues that I believe that it's irresponsible for us to proceed with a vote today. This is not a partisan move. We often dismiss each other's opinion here because of partisanship, but Mr. Bernanke was nominated by a Republican president. I supported Mr. Bernanke. I have every reason to try to justify that support by finding good that he has accomplished. He's from my home state of South Carolina, and I like him personally. There's no reason for me to oppose his nomination except the failure to achieve the goals at the Federal Reserve and his own personal goals for his time in office. We can't overlook the fact that he has presided over one of the biggest economic catastrophes that we've had as a country. Certainly, we cannot blame everything that has happened in our country on Mr. Bernanke. Perhaps it has something to do with 3 years of Democrat control of both houses of Congress, but we'll discuss that at another time. It has to be about performance, and we have very limited information to judge his performance except for the outcomes of what he's done. To protect the value of our dollar, the security of our financial system, to promote employment in our country. There's nowhere we can look to find that he has achieved the goals that we have delegated to him or his own stated goals when he took office. We have expressed many concerns on this committee. Many who are supporting him, including the chairman, have expressed these concerns. But frankly, there's been no commitment from Mr. Bernanke to actually make changes to increase accountability or transparency. I've met with Mr. Bernanke personally because I'm one of the ones who is promoting the idea of a General Accounting Office audit of the Federal Reserve so that members of Congress and the American public can at least have a general idea of what this agency is doing. I offered Mr. Bernanke to come up with his own prescription for what that audit should be so that he could protect the independence of the agency. Yet I haven't heard back from him. So we're not a step closer than we were last month or last year or 4 years from now of how for us to provide the oversight here in the Senate that we are required constitutionally to do, because it is our job here in the Congress to protect the value of our currency, and we've delegated that to the Federal Reserve. We know that the world is losing confidence in our dollar, our ability to pay our debts, yet we're not hearing any changes from the Federal Reserve. And we need to be clear here, Mr. Chairman, we're not talking about another regulator. We're not talking about another appointment. Mr. Bernanke arguably holds the most important and maybe the most powerful position in this country and maybe the world. Our economic system rests on our currency. The whole world economy, in many ways, rests on that currency. Our wealth, our prosperity as a nation, our savings, everything rides on what they do at the Federal Reserve. Yet we have very little idea about what they're doing. We know their mission has expanded well beyond what Congress delegated to them. And we know they're involved with banking systems all over the world. We don't know what they're doing. How can we provide the accountability and the oversight? And how can we find ourselves in a situation where we request documents that we as a Congress should legitimately have the right to see, and that we're in a situation today where we know that some of the staff has read part of this, but we don't know what part and we don't know what it says? How can we make a decision? How can we sit here and wave this nomination by when it is such an important responsibility for us to protect this country? And we have seen over the last few years what happens when we ignore that responsibility. We ignored it with Fannie Mae, despite warnings for years. And we were encouraged and assured by Mr. Bernanke that Fannie Mae was well capitalized. Yet we now know that they were the primary player in creating these toxic assets and selling them all over the world. And we now know, beyond any reasonable doubt, that loose monetary policy contributed to the creation of the housing bubble and other problems that we have in our economy. Yet as we consider the confirmation of Mr. Bernanke, we have not heard from him one commitment to change those policies, one new idea. We've heard some of our members say he's learned from the mistakes. He's going to be better for it. But folks, in the hearing, we did not hear Mr. Bernanke say we're going to ease this loose monetary policy that we've had. We're going to make changes. There's going to be more accountability. We did not hear that. Yet he agreed that he did not reach his goals. The Constitution gives us the responsibility. It is not Mr. Bernanke's responsibility to protect the value of our currency. It is ours. We have delegated it to him. And for us to wave this nomination by on a partisan basis perhaps today, although I think we've got mixed responses from both sides. Everyone expresses concern, but some are willing to overlook it to push this nomination through. You know, we're told by Time Magazine and others that Mr. Bernanke perhaps saved us from a Great Depression. Folks, that is very difficult. In fact, it's impossible to prove. What I do know is this, is that Mr. Bernanke, along with the previous administration and this administration, had told us that if we did not buy $1 trillion of these toxic assets, that the whole worldwide economy was going to collapse, and we had to do it immediately. How can we say that he saved the economy when we allocated this money, but we never bought one of those assets? We never took any of them off the books. Now we're saying that by forcing a lot of unwilling banks to take this money, who didn't need it, who didn't want it, and didn't use it, that somehow that has saved our country. What has saved our country is a very resilient free market system that we're threatening every time we proceed with the central management concepts that we've heard espoused by Mr. Bernanke, Mr. Geithner, and others. Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, this is far too serious for us to take as another confirmation, for us to rush through by 11:45. We've yet to get to the bottom of what the problems are and how we're going to change them. And as Senator Vitter has said, we may be on the verge of changing how the Fed operates within this system, yet we want to move ahead with the nomination as quickly as we can before we consider it. We cannot have a Federal Reserve that the majority of Americans no longer trust, and that's where we are today. We cannot have a Federal Reserve that rating agencies are beginning to say they no longer trust, and that we're on the verge of losing our good credit rating as the world reserve currency. You know, we can't rush through this when the rest of the world is looking at us and now doubting that we will continue to be the reserve currency. I hope that we can look past our normal partisan bickering and look at this as people who are responsible for the well-being of our whole country. Millions of people have entrusted to us their economic well-being, and they're counting on the value of the dollar to be sound so that their work and their sacrifice over their lifetimes will mean something. And we've seen that explode in front of our face, yet we have not made one change. We've talked about financial re-regulation, but at the bottom of all this, what holds it all up is the Federal Reserve and our currency itself. And folks, we have literally failed to get to the bottom of the problem, and we have not heard the chairman say that we're going to make any changes, and we're hearing today, despite the concerns, stay the course. Mr. Chairman, it makes no sense. I think we're irresponsible in moving ahead. I would encourage my colleagues to take a time out, and let's look at what we've been given, at least what we've been given by the Federal Reserve in these documents, and make a better decision at a later time. Mr. Chairman, I have a whole lot more I'd like to say, but I don't want to abuse your time or my colleagues, so I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.